You know that feeling in late winter when you're just absolutely desperate for spring?
Oh yeah, cabin fever sets in hard.
Right. You're staring at the frozen gray dirt in your backyard, practically willing a single green shoot to appear out of nowhere. It feels like you're waiting on magic.
But really, you're just waiting on thermodynamics.
Exactly. Which is a tough waiting game because the soil is cold, the sun is super low on the horizon, and you are, well, you're entirely at the mercy of planetary physics.
Yeah, the dirt simply has a massive energy deficit at that time of year.
At least that's the case for most of us.
Oh.
But what if you could force nature's hand? Welcome to today's deep dive. We are thrilled to have you with us.
We really are. It's a great topic today.
Today, we're exploring the fascinating physics and the sheer ingenuity of early springtime gardening. And to do this, we're pulling from some fantastic notes detailing the backyard adventures of two nature and innovation students.
Right, Kesser and Steen.
Yes, Kesser and Steen. And we're looking at their notes alongside a highly detailed scientific illustration of a greenhouse. So our mission today is to explore how a simple, slightly humorous, totally DIY backyard project perfectly illustrates the massive, complex thermodynamics that govern our entire planet.
It's a brilliant comparison.
Okay, let's unpack this
hmm
because it's such a perfect lens for the topic.
It really is. I mean, when we discuss thermodynamics, the scale is usually so incomprehensibly massive that it's hard to wrap your head around it.
Right, you're usually talking about oceans and whole atmosphere.
Exactly. But Kesser and Steen bring the physics right down to a patch of dirt in a suburban backyard. It makes it tangible.
So let's set the scene with these two. They are working in a no-dig kitchen garden setting, and they are incredibly eager for warmer weather.
As we all are in late winter.
Naturally. Now, everyone around them is doing the usual late winter, complaining, debating whether it's the coldest winter in living memory or the warmest January ever.
Classic small talk.
Yeah, but Kesser and Steen aren't just joining the chorus of complainers. They're acting like actual scientists. They are out there with their beloved logbook, rigorously measuring and logging the actual soil temperatures in a small garden bed before making any decisions.
And that rigorous baseline measurement is crucial. It's exactly what their teacher, Professor Hendricks, is pushing them to do.
He wants them to turn theory into practice, right?
Yes, you simply cannot engineer a physical solution if you don't understand the baseline data of your specific environment.
And their environment happens to be the cold north. So if they want to start a new raised bed at Steen's home and get things growing weeks ahead of schedule,
They can't just throw seeds into the frozen ground and hope for the best.
right, they have to rely on some pretty clever, dirty tricks, as the notes call them. Literally dirty tricks. They decide to build a raised bed. And the construction of this thing, I mean, it sounds less like agriculture and more like a bizarre culinary experiment.
It's a brilliant exercise in strategic physical layering, honestly.
The text describes it as being built like a layer cake sitting on top of a pizza base.
A very messy pizza base.
Very. The pizza crust is made of cardboard and newspapers laid directly on the ground. Then, the cake layers are piled on top using homemade compost.
Right, and over the course of the year, they plan to add what a greenskeeper would call top dressing.
Yeah, which sounds like a pile of yard waste.
Oh.
But there's a highly specific physical purpose to elevating the soil, isn't there?
There is, and it all comes down to the thermal properties of water versus soil. When you build a raised bed, elevating the soil above the natural flat ground level.
You're changing its relationship with moisture.
Precisely. A raised bed naturally drains much better than flat earth, meaning it holds significantly less water.
So, getting rid of the water is actually a thermal strategy to warm up the dirt.
Think about it in terms of specific heat capacity. That's the scientific metric for how much energy it takes to change a substance's temperature.
Mm.
Water has a notoriously high specific heat capacity. It's a thermal sponge. It takes a massive amount of solar energy to raise the temperature of liquid water even a single degree.
Wow. Which means if your garden is just flat, waterlogged winter soil, the sun is wasting all its time heating the water.
Exactly. The weak early spring sun has to spend all its limited energy just heating up that trapped water before it can even begin to warm up the actual soil particles where the seeds are sitting.
Right.
By raising the bed and ensuring rapid drainage, Kesser and Steen are reducing the water content so that the solar energy goes directly into heating the solid matter of the dirt.
That makes so much sense. It's not just about preventing roots from rotting, it's about energy efficiency.
Completely.
There's a fascinating geographical detail in the notes that perfectly illustrates this concept. Think about strawberry farmers in Norway. Norway is obviously quite far north, very cold, and the growing season is super short.
Oh, yeah. Definitely a tough climate for strawberries.
Right. So these farmers don't plant their strawberries down in the flat valleys. They plant them up on ridges, basically on top of plow furrows.
Uh,
They're elevating the plants just to capture that extra little bit of warmth and drain the freezing moisture away from the root zone.
it's microclimate engineering at its finest. When you're fighting against the tail end of northern winter, every single degree of temperature matters.
Now, Kesser and Steen are smart guys. They know that the microbiological activity in that homemade compost layer cake is doing some of the work for them.
Yeah, as the organic matter breaks down, those microbes are literally generating their own tiny bit of heat.
But let's be real, they're teenagers. They are impatient.
Highly impatient.
Right. They don't just want the soil to generate a slow, tiny trickle of heat. They want to actively harvest the sun's heat from the outside to speed the whole thing up.
They essentially want a greenhouse, but they don't have the budget or the space for a glass building.
Which forces them to get incredibly creative with materials they already have laying around. This is where the story gets fantastic and honestly pretty funny.
The gift wrap incident.
Yes. So Steen's mom recently received a gift, and it happened to be wrapped in this heavy-duty, totally clear plastic packaging. The boys see this piece of garbage, and inspiration strikes.
As it does.
They snip the bag open to create one large continuous sheet of thick, clear plastic, and they just lay it right over the dark mulch of their newly built raised bed.
It's the ultimate upcycled micro-greenhouse.
It really is. And you have to admire the strategic, slightly manipulative genius of Steen here.
Oh, absolutely.
The notes mention that Steen deliberately decides to throw some flowers into the kitchen garden plan alongside the vegetables. Why? Because he knows his mom will be much more positively inclined toward this giant sheet of plastic trash sitting in her yard if she sees pretty flowers sprouting under it.
It's a very smart PR move.
Completely saves him from having to give her a boring, tedious lecture on the ecological benefits of biodiversity to justify the eyesore.
A very necessary survival tactic for any teenager running weird science experiments in their parents' backyard. But scientifically, under that plastic trash, they've managed to create a perfect testing ground for what they call the thermo effect.
Okay, wait, let me push back here. Because I think a lot of us would look at a plastic sheet over a garden bed and assume it's just acting like a blanket or a windbreaker.
Just a physical barrier.
Yeah, like it's just keeping the freezing winter air from touching the dirt. Why are we giving it a fancy name like the thermo effect? Is it really doing anything more complex than a raincoat?
It is doing something vastly more complex than a raincoat or a blanket. A blanket, like a wool throw on your couch, works by trapping your body's already existing heat.
Right, it keeps your warmth close to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This clear plastic sheet isn't just trapping existing heat. It is actively harvesting and converting external solar energy. To understand the thermo effect, we have to look at the different wavelengths of light and heat.
Okay, break that down for me. How does the plastic differentiate between light and heat?
When the sun shines, it sends energy down to Earth, primarily in the form of shortwave radiation.
Shortwave. Got it.
Because the wavelength is short, it's highly energetic and piercing. It can pass almost completely unhindered through transparent materials, like that clear piece of plastic gift wrap.
So the sunlight zips right through the plastic like it's not even there?
Yes. And then it hits the dark soil, the rich compost and mulch underneath. Now, dark colors are brilliant at absorbing light.
Right, like wearing a black shirt in the summer.
Perfect analogy. So the soil absorbs that shortwave sunlight and undergoes a physical conversion, turning that light into heat energy. Here's the crucial mechanism. When the soil warms up and tries to release that heat back into the air, it doesn't emit shortwave radiation. It emits long-wave radiation, which is thermal heat.
And I'm guessing long-wave radiation behaves completely differently when it hits that plastic sheet on the way back up.
Completely differently. The clear plastic, which happily allowed the shortwave sunlight to pass through on the way down, acts like a solid brick wall to long-wave thermal radiation on the way up.
Oh, wow.
The heat simply cannot penetrate back out through the plastic to escape into the atmosphere. The solar energy checks in as light, converts to heat, and then it can't check out. It gets trapped right there at the surface of the soil.
That is fascinating. The plastic is essentially acting as a one-way valve for solar energy, but trapping radiation is only one part of the physics here, right?
Hmm.
Because the notes outline two more crucial factors at play in this little micro greenhouse that supercharge the heating process.
Yeah, radiation trapping is the engine, but you also have to stop the leaks.
Hmm.
First, as you suspected earlier with the windbreaker analogy, the plastic does physically stop the wind.
Okay, so I wasn't entirely wrong.
And not entirely. Out in the open, even a slight winter breeze will constantly strip away the microscopic thin layer of warm air sitting just above the soil. The plastic creates a perfectly isolated wind-free pocket where that warm air can continuously accumulate without being blown away.
And the second factor, because this one seems to tie right back into what we were talking about earlier with the raised bed and the water.
It does. The second factor is the cessation of evaporative cooling.
Evaporative cooling.
Yeah, when moisture evaporates from the soil into the air, that phase change, turning liquid water into water vapor gas, consumes a tremendous amount of energy from the surrounding environment.
That's the exact same physics as human sweat, right? The evaporation pulls heat away from your skin, leaving you cooler.
Exactly the same principle. If Kesser and Steen just left the wet soil open to the air, all that precious solar heat would be wasted on vaporizing the water in the dirt, cooling the soil down in the process.
Oh, man. So they'd be working against themselves.
Right. But by placing the plastic tightly over the bed, the moisture evaporates, hits the underside of the plastic, condenses back into water droplets, and stops. Because that evaporative cooling cycle is halted, all that trapped radiant energy has nowhere else to go.
It goes directly into the dirt.
Yes, waking up the dormant microorganisms and sprouting the seeds weeks earlier than they would naturally.
They've engineered a system that simultaneously maximizes solar input, blocks wind chill, and prevents evaporative heat loss, all with a piece of discarded gift wrap and a pizza base of cardboard.
It's honestly a masterclass in making physics work for you.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because this ingenious little backyard trick isn't just a clever gardening hack. It is a miniature, localized version of the exact mechanism that is keeping you, me, and every living thing alive on Earth right now.
It scales up flawlessly. The physics of shortwave and longwave radiation don't change whether you're looking at a square meter of dirt or the entire globe. Only the materials change.
Right. To help visualize this massive macro scale, let's look at the scientific illustration included in the notes. It's a diagram showing a classic glass greenhouse sitting on the curve of the Earth.
A great visual.
Yeah, you can see the sun's rays, those energetic shortwave rays, penetrating right through the glass roof of the structure. Down inside, the warm energy radiating from the Earth and the plants is represented by these wavy arrows pointing up.
But they hit the glass ceiling and bounce right back down.
They are trapped, and the diagram explicitly points out that this exact process is where the term greenhouse effect comes from, which occurs naturally in the atmosphere surrounding our entire planet.
And this is where we need to make a vital distinction between the natural greenhouse effect, which sustains life, and the enhanced greenhouse effect, which is currently altering it.
Let's break down the natural system first. Obviously, the Earth doesn't have a giant sheet of upcycled gift wrap or a glass roof over it. What is performing that filtering role for the planet?
In the natural system, we have specific atmospheric gases that perform the exact same one-way valve function as Steen's plastic sheet.
Okay, what are they?
The notes detail that the biggest contributor to this natural effect is actually water vapor. That is followed by carbon dioxide, or CO2, and methane. These natural greenhouse gases hang in the atmosphere, allowing the sun's shortwave radiation to enter, but trapping a significant portion of the Earth's outgoing long-wave heat.
The notes provide a truly stunning number regarding just how important that natural atmospheric plastic sheet really is.
It's a shocking figure.
Yeah, without those natural greenhouse gases trapping the heat, the Earth would be approximately 33 degrees Celsius colder than it is today.
33 degrees Celsius is a catastrophic drop. I mean, a planet that cold would be completely uninhabitable for us. The oceans would freeze solid, the water cycle would stop. So the natural greenhouse effect isn't a bad thing. It is the fundamental reason life on Earth is possible.
But then we have to look at the other side of the coin, which the text introduces as the enhanced greenhouse effect. This is the man-made side of the equation.
Right. The enhanced effect occurs when human activities dramatically increase the concentration of these specific gases in the atmosphere.
Activities like what?
We're talking about the massive burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas, alongside industrial-scale agriculture and global deforestation. While water vapor remains the largest natural contributor, The scientific notes emphasize that CO2 is the primary driver of the current rapid changes we're seeing due to these artificially increased emissions.
If we use the backyard analogy, we are essentially making the plastic sheet over the garden thicker and thicker and thicker.
That is the perfect way to visualize it. By thickening the barrier, we are trapping too much of that outgoing long-wave radiation.
And the consequences outlined in the text are vast.
Yeah, rising average global temperatures, which leads directly to the melting of glacial ice, which causes rising sea levels.
Plus, because we discussed how heat drives evaporation, trapping more heat creates much more extreme, highly energized weather patterns.
Exactly. We see wild swings between severe, parching droughts in some areas and massive, overwhelming floods in others because the whole water cycle is being supercharged with trapped thermal energy.
Now, this is a topic that obviously comes with a lot of intense, often polarized debate. And our goal here is to look at all the information provided in the sources impartially, giving you exactly what the texts present. Because the source material deliberately introduces some really fascinating historical context to give a much wider view of climate history, spanning thousands of years.
It is essential context.
Right.
Understanding the sheer scale of planetary cycles helps us comprehend what is actually happening today.
The text explicitly points out that the last ice age in the north stopped about 12,000 years ago. After that, the planet got a bit warmer, then it got a bit colder again, oscillating naturally, until about 10,000 years ago when it truly began to thaw in earnest.
Right?
And that massive thaw 10,000 years ago is exactly what allowed human agriculture to begin down in the Middle East. The source makes a very clear point to emphasize that this massive period of global warming and ice melting happened long before humans ever started extracting huge amounts of fossil fuels from the Earth's interior.
Which is an undeniable geological reality. The planet has undergone massive natural temperature swings long before industrialization was even a concept.
So how do we balance that?
Well, the text balances this historical reality by clarifying the specific nature of the current scientific consensus regarding today's warming.
Right. How do we reconcile the fact that the Earth warmed naturally 10,000 years ago with the current crisis we are facing?
It comes down to two things: velocity and equilibrium. The text explains that many scientists point out the primary issue with the current global climate situation is a severe disruption in balance.
The balance between what comes in and what goes out.
Exactly. There is a delicate, long-term equilibrium between the incoming solar shortwave energy and the outgoing long-wave heat. That balance is currently being actively, rapidly shifted toward higher temperatures, specifically due to the enhanced modern emissions. It's not just the simple fact that the globe is warming, it's why it's warming right now, and the unprecedented speed at which that thick atmospheric plastic is being added to the closed system.
It's the difference between the sun slowly coming up over the course of a morning to warm a garden naturally versus Kesser and Steen throwing a heavy, impermeable plastic tarp over the dirt to force the heat to spike instantly. The system doesn't have time to adjust.
That's a great way to put it. If we connect this to the bigger picture, Kesser and Steen's backyard project is a flawless mirror of our entire atmosphere. The same thermodynamic rules that allow a teenager to block evaporative cooling and wake up dormant soil microbes in freezing weather are the exact same thermodynamic rules dictating the melting of glacial ice and the rising of the oceans.
It's all one interconnected, scalable system of shortwave light, longwave heat, and atmospheric barriers.
Precisely.
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive looking at a couple of impatient students who just wanted to grow some vegetables a few weeks early in the freezing cold north. They built a pizza base out of wet cardboard, layered some compost, and threw away the packaging from a gift by laying it over the dirt.
It sounds so simple.
Right. On the surface, it sounds like the most mundane, everyday activity imaginable. But what they really did was host a masterclass in planetary physics.
They proved that you don't need access to a multi-million-dollar laboratory or a supercomputer to observe the fundamental laws of the universe in action.
The grand scientific principles governing the Earth, thermodynamics, radiation filtering, evaporative cooling, they aren't locked away in some ivory tower. They're happening right under our feet, in the dirt, under a discarded piece of gift wrap.
Yeah.
By manipulating the microclimate of a single raised bed, those boys were interacting with the exact same forces that keep the entire Earth from freezing over into a ball of ice.
This raises an important question, though, one that steps outside of Steen's garden and directly into our modern daily lives.
Oh, I like where this is going. What's the question?
Well, think about what Kesser and Steen accomplished. They altered a local ecosystem intentionally with one small sheet of clear plastic. But look around the modern world. Look at our sprawling cities. If a simple discarded wrapper can alter a garden's microclimate enough to wake up dormant life in the dead of winter, how many other everyday man-made materials in our urban environments are accidentally acting as invisible microgreenhouses?
Oh, wow. Think about all the glass office buildings, the endless miles of black asphalt absorbing heat, the plastic waste sitting in landfills.
Think about all of it. How many thousands of unintended thermal barriers have we built that are secretly trapping long-wave radiation, entirely reshaping the local ecosystems right under our noses without us even realizing it?
That's incredible.
We might all be living inside millions of overlapping microgreenhouses, constantly altering the thermal baseline of our own neighborhoods.
That is a brilliant and slightly unsettling thought to leave on, because the next time you find yourself desperately waiting for spring, staring at the frozen ground in your yard, remember that the warmth isn't magic, it's trapped energy, and we are the ones building the traps. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, keep looking at the science hidden in your own backyard, and we'll see you next time.